Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're so happy to have you here with us today. The Zoom aspect of our program will start in 10 minutes. There's just a technical delay. And the live stream has already started. So we welcome those who have joined us on social media from various places. And today we'll be talking about ways in which to purify the mind, because the mind is the sense within, and when the mind is controlled through the process of bhakti yoga, then there's a natural way that we're connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that's the great fortune of our lives. So one of the processes to achieve this kind of purity of mind is through chanting of the divine names of God or Krishna. We say Krishna because it means the all-attractive one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the source of everything, especially the source of all beauty, knowledge, strength, renunciation. And when we chant the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we come directly in contact with the Supreme Himself through the mantra. What to speak of all of the spiritual world is present there within the mantra itself. Right, Sadhu Vrindavan? He knows. He came right into the vibration when he was born and keeps it going throughout his life. So let's try chanting. First, we'll start with a beautiful song from Bhaktivinoda Thakur that describes the relationships in the spiritual world, because everyone looks for relationships in every aspect of life. If we gravitate towards relationships more than anything. Let's just say you live in a stone house. Anybody here live in a stone house? How about a wooden house? How about part wood, part stone house? Something. Who knows what it's made out of nowadays? You live in a house, but if your consciousness is absorbed in the wood or the stone or the metal or whatever it's made out of, you won't have any happiness. You'll just be in stone or wood or plaster consciousness. What we want in a stone house or a wood house or any other house is happiness, and the happiness comes from the relationships we have within the house. If you have poor relationships within the house, even if it's a grand house, you'll wish you didn't live there, I guarantee you. And if you live in a little small house or maybe a hut, does anybody here live in a hut? No hut dwellers? Well, how about a cave? Anybody live in a cave? And came down for the class today? No. Well, if you did, but you had happy relationships within the cave with somebody else or with your own mind, then you wouldn't mind the cave at all. So the real trick in life is to purify the mind. And the song we're going to sing is about a small little village where everybody has a spiritual relationship with Krishna. And among themselves, all the people who live in that spiritual village, it's called Vraja. Everyone say Vraja. Everyone lives in that small town that they all feel happy because they have a relationship with Krishna and with all the devotees of Krishna. Would you like to sing a song like that? Okay, let's try it. It'll be Jai Radha Madhava, in case you couldn't guess which song it was. The third tune. Now put the words up, but don't worry if you can't sing along. You can just listen to the music. Then we're going to go into the Hare Krishna mantra. And you can sing along that one because it's easy. It's only 3 different words. 16 words altogether and 32 syllables. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. 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 Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Here comes the Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Thank you, everyone, for singing so beautifully. That was amazing. And such a happy tune. Really, the way we carry ourselves in life and the direction we decide to go in life, it depends on the song we keep in our heart. Because the body is like a chariot and the heart is the driver. And if we have a transcendental happy song in our heart, then no matter where we are, we'll transport ourselves in such a way that we're above the complexities of the material world. So, the founder of this movement, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, contributed to the teachings of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness all over the world by bringing with him to the United States, first in New York, several literatures that are extremely important for those who are eager to improve themselves spiritually. One of them is the Bhagavad Gita, and the other one is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Within these two books, there are instructions about how to deal with one's mind. Now consider that when you're born, you get a free mind thrown in. It's thrown in for free, but you only get one. So you have to be the person who deals with the mind and make sure that it's operating properly. And fortunately, there's an instruction book that comes along with the mind. It's not available when you're first born, but it's on the planet available. Bhagavad Gita is one such book. Srimad Bhagavatam is another. And have you ever had the experience putting together some IKEA furniture where you finally gave up and decided to follow the book? Oh, good. So I'm not the only one. And in a similar way, if all else fails in dealing with the mind, and it will, it's helpful to follow the instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita. As Krishna is, if you'll indulge for a moment, the supreme person, speaking to us out of benevolence in order to give a practical path that we can all follow as humans. And by the way, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you have a human form, it's a funny way to say it. Are you humans? Check and see. Well, then you're lucky, because it's a great opportunity, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'll keep referring to Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a text that teaches all about the science of bhakti. Bhakti means a practice of yoga that is driven by engagement of our senses in higher topics and in service to the Supreme. It's not stopping anything, but it's using our senses and our mind to do divine service. So that's called devotional service. Some people call it bhakti yoga. And Srimad Bhagavatam is one such text which describes how our minds become affected by our association. The Bhagavad Gita says the same thing, and that is that whatever state of mind we're in now is a result of our previous associations in this world. The verse goes, Purusha prakritisto hi bhukte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. Wherever you find yourself, whatever state of mind you find yourself in, is a result of association. Because as human beings, or as sentient beings in human bodies, it's not that we have a soul, but we are the soul. The soul is also called the Atma, or it's a divine spark of life. It's the only entity in the material world that's non-compostable. According to a book I got over the pandemic, you can compost anything except for the soul, because it doesn't break down ever. Never has broken, never will break down. Whereas everything else you can compost, and eventually it'll break down. Are there any chemists in here? Can tell us what chemical or element has the longest half-life? Just engineers? Okay. So, as sentient beings, we're very sensitive. And as we move about the world and we associate ourselves with others, primarily through the sound vibration we receive from various people and realms that we're in. In fact, any realm, can anybody look up the word realm, please? Whatever realm you're in, does anybody live in a realm somewhere? Yeah. What does it mean? We'll need a plethora of microphones to execute our duties here today. Thank you, all of you who are transferring over from the Bhakti Yoga retreat today. Thanks for coming.
A realm is a noun, and it means a kingdom. It can also mean a field or domain of activity or interest.
Okay. Every field of activity or area of interest or kingdom is developed by sound. And that's why movies have soundscapes. And whatever kinds of people we're around, we'll find that there's a unique type of sound vibration that comes from each because of their proclivities. Everyone has an inclination to speak about a certain type of topic and also to make certain kinds of music. Everyone has some kind of song to sing. Can you think of any culture that doesn't have a song to sing? Well, if you can, remind me not to go there. Everywhere you go, there's a song. Sentient beings want to sing something. And the kinds of songs they're singing and the kinds of stories they're telling, actually wisdom gets passed down in most cultures through stories, will determine, as we associate with them, how we develop our own minds. And that, according to Bhagavad Gita, is the science of the mind and how we get into the state of mind we're in now. It's a it, meaning the mind, and the state of mind that we're in, is an aggregation of the various kinds of sounds we hear from the different kinds of people we associate with. Also, sound carries consciousness. So we pick up the mood of the people we're associating with. If they have pure intentions, when we hear the sound that comes from them, then that particular sound vibration that we imbibe from them also gives us a similar mood. So once we're in a state of mind, a particular state of mind, it takes practice to reform the mind if we want it to be in a purer state. So what do I mean by purity? I'll just be a little technical for a second. Can you bear with me for a moment? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how there are 3 modalities that dominate the world that we're in now. There's, at the higher end of the spectrum, what's called sattva, and it's a realm of clarity, or an energy of clarity, and also it's pure. And the next modality is called rajas, or passion. It stimulates in us the desire to act and to achieve and to acquire results. And then the lowest of modalities is called tamas, or ignorance. It's a very dark mode, and it instills irrational activity, meaning we can do things that are harmful to ourselves. We may even know they're harmful, but we still do it anyway because we're influenced by this lower energy. And according to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, these 3 energies mix together all the time, and they're always fighting for supremacy. So you may be experiencing a modicum of sattva, or the higher, more clear energy of the world, but then there's an upsurge in rajas, or passion, and then suddenly you feel inspired to do more creation or to acquire, and ignorance can also emerge. And there can be combinations and permutations of all these 3 that make a palette full of colors. More than a palette, a spectrum of colors. So similarly, there's a spectrum of moods and perspectives and types of consciousness in this world because of the mixing of the modes of material nature. And actually, our minds are material. They're instruments, originally completely pure, but like a palette, they get influenced by the gunas, or the qualities I just described. And on that originally clear, pure palette, we see various combinations and permutations of color. And that is the lens we look through and see the world. That's why a Greek philosopher once said, we don't see the world the way it is, we see the world the way we are. But how are we seeing? We're seeing it through the lens of the mind. And another example of the mind that's given is what I mentioned in the beginning before we chanted, is a mirror. And if you've ever seen a mirror that gets warped or has a blemish on it, you might be startled. Have you ever looked in a mirror and it showed you to be about 30 pounds heavier than you actually are? Does that concern anybody? Or, yeah? No? Maybe? Or have you ever looked in a mirror and it makes your head look like it's lopsided? Of course, it may be anyway, but that happened to me once on an airplane when I was dozing, and I got up and I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh, I must have had my head in between the seats because now it looks lopsided. I don't think I'll get off the plane. I look like a monster. But then I moved my head a couple inches to the left and I saw that it looked fairly normal, but it was just a blemish in the mirror that had distorted it. So the mind like that distorts distorts reality. And according to the state of the mind, we see the world. So it's necessary then to purify the mind, and the process of yoga means to come to such a state of purity in mind that the mind is not disturbed by unnecessary desires, but it takes pleasure in the self. This is something mentioned by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita when he was asked by his student Arjuna, what is a symptom of somebody who is in a spiritually situated, who has a spiritually situated mind? What is the symptom of such a person? And the first thing he tells him is, Prajahati adakaman sarvan partamanogatan atman yevatmana tushta stita pragnasta dochate. Stita means to be steady. It's a cognate with the word in English stand. Like you have a place to stand where you can't be pushed around. And he said a person who's got spiritual standing, this is the first symptom, that he or she is able to observe the condition of the mind as a witness and notice that it's producing various kinds of desires. And that person has discrimination to see which one of these desires he or she should hook onto and which ones should leave behind. And he describes, does Krishna, in this verse, that the mind creates myriad propositions, desires, which are combinations and permutations of various sense objects that we've seen over millennia in different types of bodies. They're all these images are accumulated within the mind. Modern psychologists have talked about it as the subconscious. There are various suggestions we get from the subconscious mind all the time that we're not aware of. And we think, oh yeah, I thought of that. But it's actually a little factory in there. And it's taking all the kinds of impressions that we've seen, things we've heard, and then manufacturing 31 flavors, or how many ever Baskin-Robbins has. But times 8,400,000. I mean, it adds up to at least that much. Different ideas. So a person who's fixed in spiritual consciousness then can see all these various suggestions of the mind and not feel compelled to embrace them and say, I have to follow this dictate. Have you ever seen something come through your mind, like a desire, and you thought that's a bad idea, but then you found yourself doing it anyway? Oh, good. Thanks for smiling, laughing, and raising your hands, because I feel better now. Well, a person who develops this strength of mind through the process of yoga then doesn't feel obligated to grab onto everything that the mind brings up. Just sees it as a kind of concoction, because the person who's practicing yoga has a different plan. The way you outsmart a genius. Do you know how to outsmart a genius? Of course, most of you are geniuses, so it's hard to bring up in this audience. But if you're not, like me, then the way you outsmart a genius is you get a better plan than the genius, and you just follow that. Geniuses can go any which way. It doesn't matter the strength of your mind, but if you have the discrimination to follow a better plan, then you'll be more successful. And that's what you need to be successful in yoga. Find a plan that was set out by somebody who has a clearer perspective than you do. And what's suggested in all the yoga literatures is there's a supreme being who knows what the best plan is, and it's better than yours. And if you follow that plan, then you'll be successful. And so when the mind suggests various plans and ideas, you say, yeah, thanks a lot. but I already have another plan. I'd like to follow yours, but it's really stupid, just by default, because you concocted it. It's kind of like Jarvis. Is that the name of the AI program? Is it called Jarvis? No, it's a AI. It's a artificial intelligence. The one that you can say make up a paragraph that talks about flashlights, and the next thing you know, there's like 10 paragraphs it'll concoct. It'll pull from all over the internet. Ekachakra is it called Jarvis? Huh?
Yes.
Jamulus? Yes, Jarvis. Yeah, so Jarvis, it's an AI tool for people who want to make up stuff. No, it's supposed to help you in writing things, and it can be very helpful in some ways. But it does just pull from all over the place, and it can come up, if you don't know how to use it properly, it can come up with paragraphs that are, they sound good, but they're utter nonsense. It sounds like, that's really good writing. But if you actually looked into it, it's like, no, that's completely wrong. And so the mind does that too. It comes up with all kinds of ideas that seemed like a good idea at the time, but it's really not. So what's suggested, Krishna, who's teaching the yoga process in the Bhagavad Gita, suggests, is that we get used to following the instructions of those who are not affected by the modes of material nature. And if we can do that, then we can move through the world without incident. That means we don't get caught up in the various complicated situations that are created by making wrong choices. So, for those whose minds are affected to any degree by the modes of material nature, they get colored, like if you get a kind of color in the wash that you weren't expecting, it goes into all the other clothes. Colors are our whole experience in the material world. So the first method recommended in the Bhagavad Gita is to take direction from the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam about what choices to make and where to fix your mind, which object to think of, so that the mind becomes not only satisfied but also purified. So it turns out there is something that you can fix your mind on, but it's not a thing, it's actually a person. So Krishna is the supreme form, according to the Vedas, and his form is spiritual. It's not a material form. And so if you think of the spiritual form of Krishna, use your mind and keep bringing your mind back to the spiritual form of Krishna, then the mind becomes satisfied, it becomes pure. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ananyaschintayantomam yejana pariyupasate tesham nityabdhyuktanam yogakshemam bahamyaham. That when you test this out, you'll see that if you think of Krishna and I'll talk about how to do that in a minute. If you think of Krishna, invest your consciousness in thinking of Krishna, then you won't lack anything. You'll be infused with good sense about how to work and act in the world. And whatever resources are available in the world, which is a lot what the mind goes after, isn't it? I learned it in economics. We were all looking for scarce resources and try to control them, because that's the idea. Try to control the scarce resources. So there's resources everywhere, and I'm trying to gather them in my mind to think, how can I control them? So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that here's an alternative, better plan. think of the form of the Supreme and fix that in your mind, then he said you won't want for anything. All resources will be available to you because you're going right to the source. So I'm so used to gathering all the resources myself and trying to hold them all in my mind. And then while I'm holding one, the other one's evaporating, trying to open the door with my foot, get everything balanced in my life. But if I go to one source, which is Krishna, and I think of Krishna, then I'll naturally be in contact with all the stipulated energies will be synchronized in one place, and they're all available at one time. That's a better plan. Therefore, in all of the teachings of the Vedas and about yoga, there's all these rules and regulations, things you're supposed to do and not do. Anybody from a very religious culture, it doesn't matter where you're from, could be Israel or India. I don't know how much in America this applies, but in a lot of religious cultures, there are lots of regulations you're supposed to follow in order to be considered to be in harmony with the process that you're following. Is this resonating with any of you? Okay, let the record show for those who couldn't hear that. Someone said yes, and what the tone of voice was, yeah, definitely we've experienced that. So there's this one-pointedness that Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita, which comes to, which is epitomized by a consolidation of all the rules and regulations that you have to follow in your life in order to be successful in business, in your religious process, or whatever it may be. And they come down to this: using the mind. Number one, never forget Krishna. And you ready for the second one? You sure? Always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna, always remember Krishna. So it's simplified, isn't it? Because there can be a lot of things, don't touch this. If you touched it, then put it back here for how many hours, and be careful of this and that. But if you go to this one source, Krishna, who's the source of all spiritual energy, he's the origin of everything, and you think of him, and you meditate on him, and you always stay that way, and whenever you forget, then you come back, you remember Krishna again, then everything will fall into place perfectly. That's an easier process than trying to cover everything individually. And that's what's actually recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. So how can we do this practically? There are a lot of, I have a lot of desires, I have a lot of plans and necessities. Does anybody here have any necessities? Yes. Could you name like 3? We're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're talking about the first couple rungs on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are some of the necessities you have? Food? We'll feed you later, don't worry. Let's try to hold on, would you? Okay. House, you got to have a house. If you're Canada, you got to have a house. So somehow or other, you have to have some shelter to live. Even yogis live in caves. Come on. So you have house. Any other? One more necessity? Clothing. You got to have clothing. And if you want to walk around San Francisco or Palo Alto and look around, but most of the shops, they're clothes or food. And nail salons. 3 things. Okay. That's another necessity on Maslow's pyramid somewhere. So there are all these necessities that one may need. And so how do you tie them all up? Well, one of the ways that Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita is to transform them. Don't try to avoid them, but transform them. So in a single verse, he solves all our problems. Because we have lots of stuff, things, thoughts, necessities, So here's what he says. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagnau brahmanohutam brahmaiva tena gantavya brahmakarma samadhina. And what this basically means is it's good news for all of us. Whatever you have now, and whatever plans you have, desires and so forth, you could keep them. Feel better? Okay. However, if you use them in service to Krishna, then they transform from being material and they become spiritual. So they're no longer a problem for you. So even as you live amidst various desires, and you have material possessions and infrastructure that you have to take care of, the formula is, and it's all fits into this paradigm of always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him, including taking medicine. Anybody take medicine? Okay. So if you're using your body in service and you take medicine, it becomes spiritualized because you're doing it to stay alive so you can keep doing service. So that counts too. And let's say if your child's about to fall off a cliff and you grab his hand and pull him back up, does that count? Yeah, if you're working in devotional service because you want to stay alive. So it's okay to stay alive. So the Bhagavatam says, everything you have now to stay alive in the hierarchy of needs, if you just change how you think about it and think of it as to be used in service, paraphernalia to be used in service, then all of that myriad of items that you have and considerations that you're making, it becomes transformed from material thoughts and possessions into spiritual ones. And an example that our founder of this movement and the main teacher, Srila Prabhupada, gave repeatedly was that if you take an iron rod and you put it into fire and you leave it there long enough, it transforms from iron into fire. And so everything that we have, including our bodies, our minds, our houses, the various, is it possible to take a holiday and turn it into a spiritual occasion? It ought to be, because the name holiday actually means a holy day, doesn't it? And that's how far you can go. You have a holy day, and then all of a sudden it's something else. So basically, the Bhagavad Gita is saying is, okay, just remember it's a holy day, not for something else. And that pertains to practically everything in our lives. So it's a simple formula. And so what's the best way to do this? Well, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita tells us some kind of shocking news. So if you're not in the mood to feel a little shocked right now, you're kind of relaxed and you don't want to get your heartbeat going too fast, then we have a waiting room out here. You can step out for a minute. Of course, there's speakers out there, so plug your ears. You're all staying? Okay, so he talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita in a chapter called Attaining the Supreme. Sounds pretty lofty, but that's actually the purpose of life. So he says that when we're working in the world and playing in the world and interacting with all the things we have, we'll start to develop a mindset that gets calcified. What does calcified mean? Yeah. Have you ever seen anything that calcifies? In your home, maybe in the sink? Yeah, if you have a lot of calcium in your water, it starts coming down and it gets hard like rock. Research department, what do we have?
Calcified, it's used in biology and chemistry. It's an adjective, and it means hardened by deposition of or...
This important deposition means... Yeah, go ahead.
Deposition of or conversion into calcium carbonate or another insoluble calcium compound.
Yeah, so the mind is originally pure and flexible, but it gets calcified by our connection with various material thoughts and images and desires. It all comes together and then it hardens. That's why sometimes you might think that that's me. I might think, why am I so hard-hearted? And, there's a calcification. Or why am I stuck in my ways? Because the mind has become calcified to act in a certain way. Anybody ever heard of addiction? Yeah. So addiction means that you do it so many times, there's so many depositions, you're putting in one drop after another, you think it's a little thing, but then those little drops add up. What are they, stalagmites or stalactites? Which ones go up and which ones go down for 300 points in this class? No one's been in a cave before? You don't know what stalagmites and stalactites are? If not, I have to take you to a few caves. Stalagmites and stalactites, and I don't know which ones are which, but some go down and some go up. But which one? He knows. What do we have, a geologist in here? Are you a caver? How do you know these things? You come from a good family. They took you places, right? Good for you. So which one is it? Stalactites come down. Stalactites you'll see in caves. They've been there sometimes for millions of years, and a little tiny infusion of water comes down. It catches onto the end, and now I'm making it up, so I hope nobody knows what I'm talking about, because then it that calcifies at the tip, and it just sticks. It hardens, and after a while, some of them are many feet long. They can be, yards long. And you can go in these caves and see gigantic, looks like icicles. Same thing happens with ice. But in these caves, it becomes hardened. So as we go through and we expose ourselves to various images in the material world, especially those, I'm thinking of how to squeeze out some happiness from matter, and I get some temporary exposure. These are called, sorry if I use a technical term, but hladini samskars. Hladini means bliss, and the samskar means it leaves a stalactite. It forms into a calcified sense that I want to enjoy that again. And when there's enough of them in there, when I've gone through a whole lifetime, then I develop a whole cave full of these stalactites and stalagmites. Those are the ones that come up from the ground and point upwards. Then, here comes the shocking part. When we leave this particular body, which could happen pretty much at any time, no guarantee, and there's no warranty or lease agreement, then the conglomeration of these impressions impels us to take another material body. And in the world of yoga, that's not a good thing, just so you know. The object is not to stay in the repeated cycle of birth and death, but it's to become freed from that cycle, which is called samsara, and it causes us to suffer. Like we're forced to move on constantly, like we are homeless wanderers, and you're in a place and then somebody comes and says, okay, get out. So we control our own future, but it all has to do with the mind. So Krishna says in the Gita that yang vapi smaran bhavam tajatyante kalevram tam evaitikonteya sadatad bhava bhavita, which means that whatever your mind is fixated on when you leave the world, and that will occur because of the accumulation of these impressions that become calcified. They're very hard. So it's not like at the time of death you can say, hey, wait a minute, I need a 5-minute do-over. I'm going to become spiritual now. You don't get do-overs. You get them now, so it's a good time for your do-overs right now. But when you're in the throes, which is spelled Throes, check it. What are the throes? Do you all know this word? Research department is working on it. Tell us. This also may be alarming, so I know it's a family show.
Thros, it's spelled Throes. It's a noun, and it means intense or violent pain and struggle, especially accompanying birth, death, or great change.
Nice, right? Family show, Sunday afternoon. Okay, so when you leave the body, it's known as the throes because it's a very intense time. So there's a science behind it. Science in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, according to how we've allowed our minds to calcify throughout life by taking little drops here, little drops there, it all comes into a whole cave of stalactites and stalagmites. And then material nature very kindly offers us another body exactly resembling our desires that are considered on aggregated level. So now, the way that Krishna says we can make the mind free and we can overcome this tendency to become attracted to everything in the world and then try to take some enjoyment from it, which then causes us to take on these sladini samskars, doesn't mean that we can't have enjoyment in the world. And it doesn't mean that we can't interact with the world and use our senses. But he says, first of all, that we should utilize the process of the mind, of thinking of Krishna. And so he says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, which means that at all times and places, you should utilize this. Mad anushmara yud... Sorry. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusvara yudyacha mayarpita manobudhir mami vaishyasya samshaya. So he's saying that throughout your life, practice bringing your mind to Krishna. Now, I said a moment ago, you don't have to give up the sense objects, right? So what did I say about 17 and a half minutes ago about all the things that we have in the world and how they can be transformed? For 250 points. Stalagmites and stalactites are still at 300. Yes, Tori, what is it? Huh? Here comes a mic if you're into it. We need a mic check on aisle 3, please.
Hello.
Yes, there you are.
You can use in Krishna's service.
That if we transform them into service for Krishna, then it becomes spiritual.
Okay, 250. So let's give a few examples. I'm going to use myself as an example shamefully, so please don't mind. When I came into the bhakti yoga process, I was a very skinny little runt. I grew a little bit. I was skinny because in high school, I decided that I was going to be 100% spiritual. It was my junior year of high school. I said, enough of this other stuff. I'm going to be spiritual. So as far as I could tell, the best way to do that would be to give up the world. So one of the things I thought was most connected with the world was eating. So I decided, rather unsuccessfully, that I would give up eating. So I reduced my eating a lot. By the time I met devotees who were teaching this philosophy of Krishna consciousness, I was very skinny. And they said, "What's your problem?" And I said, I'm giving up the world. I don't eat. Just a little palmful of oats is all I would eat, and some water. And so they said, no, you got it all wrong. You can eat. You just have to eat food that's spiritual. And I said, could you please show me some? And that was when I started gaining weight. Because the food they showed me looked a lot better than oats. And I remember after committing myself to be a monk in the temple, they had fed me one of the sweetest, tastiest things I'd ever had in my life called halva. Anybody here ever had halva? You've had it? Okay. So I'm giving a confession here, but I ate so much halva I thought I would die. And what came through my mind when I thought I was dying of eating too much halva was the headlines, maybe in my school newspaper, that such and such, who thought he was a big spiritual hero, standout, died of overeating. The point is, there is spiritual food, which is good news. And there's a process for spiritualizing it, which just happens to be the same way that we spiritualize our minds, which means to offer them in service. So when the eating process is that I get a bag of something that's sealed, any of the food items that are around the periphery of the grocery store are closer to actual food. Other things are called food-like substances. Did you know that? It's good to be aware of, because overly processed foods. And so let's just say you buy a food-like substance that has a real zing to it, because there's lots of spices and artificial flavors, and then you open it and you jam your hand into it, and then you stuff it in your mouth and eat it. That's different than if you get nice substances or wholesome ingredients, and even if they're simple, and you cook them in a mindset that I'm going to offer this to Krishna. And then when you're done cooking, you make a simple arrangement to offer it to Krishna with a few from the heart prayers that I'm offering you this. And then you eat it, then it's spiritual. And so in Krishna's instruction, that in all times and places means that everything that we do in our life, whatever it may be, whether it's our work or having children or eating, then it can be spiritualized. So when you're doing it, you're thinking of Krishna. And when you do that, then your mind becomes purified, and all the aspects of your life become naturally happy, because you're engaging the senses, you get all the variety that you were hoping for, but it's satisfying rather than it overstimulating, and it doesn't cause any reaction. And more than that, it actually awakens within us a sense of spiritual happiness and an intention to do more service. So, last point before we take some reflections. It's hard for me, someone might say, to connect all these things. I do so many things in my life. How am I going to connect them all to Krishna? So the very simple process for doing that, almost automatically, is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada. Remember I mentioned Srila Prabhupada? He was the founder of this organization, and he brought many books. I said he brought 2 main books when he first came here. What were they? For 200 points. What'd you say? Ramayan? Wrong question. Wrong answer. Catcher in the Rye? Nope. What else? What did you say? No.
The Bhagavad Gita. And
Okay, 200 points. All you others, Catcher in the Rye. No, you were wrong. Yeah, so he brought the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote commentary to the Bhagavad Gita, and the verse I just mentioned, he wrote a comment in it to that verse, practically telling us how we can apply this principle. So now I'm going to read it to you. And if someone would bring me a Bhagavad Gita, then I'll have it in my hands and I can read it. Because I'd prefer not to take away the Zoom, because it's too nice. And I see my godbrother Ratatvaj Swami there, and it's giving me great joy. Hare Krishna Maharaj. You can give him a hand. Okay, here's the verse. It's at 8.7. And Krishna says, therefore, Arjuna, and this therefore comes after the part where I just scared everybody by saying your mind gets calcified. Whatever you remember at the time of death, that's what you're going to get, whether you like it or not. Now Krishna says, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna. And at the same time, carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So Arjuna was a warrior. That's why he was saying you got to fight. Here's the purport. The purport is an explanation of the verse given in resonance with all of the previous great teachers of bhakti. This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men and women engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his or her prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's names, one will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt. Okay, what did you hear so far? Anything you heard since the beginning of the monologue that stuck in your minds? Bali Mardan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So I like your point about Sthita Prajna, as it is very much important in this world to live in both the material world and in spiritual practice. So Sthita Prajna explanation, how you stand out and what is the stability, that is very important and we should meditate. Thank you for...
Thank you for bringing this up. This is very important. In the section of the Bhagavad Gita that Bali Mardan's referring to and recalling from what we discussed earlier, Krishna describes how we should become sthita prajna. That means that the mind should become fixed. We need to have a clear plan, and the mind also has to have strength. Not only do we have to have a good plan, but you also have to have what's called yoga balena. It comes in a verse later in this chapter 8, where, if I may, and I'll try, Krishna says, Prayana kale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam param purusham upaiti divyam. And here he's saying that those who take time during this lifetime, you don't have to take all your time, but you have to take at least some time, and it's recommended at least every day, to do some yoga practice, because what you'll get is invaluable. It's called yoga balena. Bal means strength. So you have strength of mind. And remember, I did that survey earlier where I asked, have you ever wanted to do something and then you end up doing something different? Or you had a plan not to eat a gallon of ice cream with a single spoon sitting in the corner in the dark, but you looked later and it was empty? Huh? Well, when you have yoga balena, you have the presence of mind, you have discrimination, and you also have this kind of otherworldly strength that will amaze you. It amazes those who practice it because they go, where did that come from? How did I get this strength? Normally, I would be the one in the corner with the spoon and the empty gallon of ice cream. And yoga balena comes from contact with Krishna. So you get both things when you chant Hare Krishna. You get this sense of discrimination. You also get spiritual strength. And this is called sthita prajna. Your mind is fixed. You can't be pushed around by the lower senses and say, hey, I wanted that. And you say, okay, later. We'll get it for you. Ha. And you just keep moving on. Okay, let's see. A couple more thoughts. What did you hear that stuck in your mind? We'll churn them out, and then it'll stick more deeply.
one point, the sound vibration you're hearing, you will be in that consciousness, you said, right? That
Yes, exactly. Thanks for bringing that up. Every realm is distinguished by the sound vibration in the realm. And that's why movies use a soundscape. If you see, for instance, if you saw a movie where there's some dire circumstances, but it had very light music, you'd think, oh, actually, they're just kidding. But if you see something that looks light, but the music is very heavy, then you'll think, oh, this is heavy. The realm is defined by the sound and the level of our consciousness, or our consciousness itself, which is also a realm. I mean, we have to live in this body, which is a realm. It's a place of residence. That was one of the definitions we got from the research department, that it's a field that we live in. So the realm that we live in is defined by the kind of sound vibration that we not only imbibe, but that resonates in the mind stuff after we imbibe it. We take it in and it stays there. So this is why chanting the Mahamantra, which is a purely spiritual sound vibration that comes from the fourth dimension. There's 3 dimensions here in the material world. And then when you go into the fourth dimension, it's called Turiya. It's beyond the fetters of the material world. And then when that sound comes down here, you can channel it down through what's called the parampara. And you take the sound, the mantra, and when you repeat it, then it purifies the realm of the mind. And this is the technique for becoming spiritually strong, having discrimination. And also, ultimately, when we're leaving this particular body, we'll have the wherewithal to think of Krishna. And the best and easiest way to think of Krishna is by chanting his name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Good point. Let's take 2 more. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, you don't need a mic. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I love the ending. You will attain me without a doubt. It's a guarantee, it's a surety. What else we are looking for, I don't know.
Yeah, that's important. Yavaishat yasamshaya, ashamshaya. There's no doubt that if you apply this process, that it'll be effective. So, you know, when you get guarantees from most places, it's hard to abide. They are hard to abide because we think maybe, you know, it's just an advertising ploy or something like that. But when we change our mindset and we think there are influences in this world and influencers that don't come from the material realm, we need that. And there's a sense that there's someone that's not conditioned by the same laws I'm conditioned by, who is speaking things, who's offering devices for us. In fact, there's a technical term for this called avatar. An avatar is one who comes down from a higher position to our position, in this case, in my condition, not yours, but comes down to save somebody who's helpless and fallen, and then is able to pull that person back up. So the name itself and the mantra is an avatar. It actually comes from a higher level. There's a poem about it. You want to hear the poem? It's in Bengali. Golo kera prema dhana hari nama sankirtana. Golo kera Hari Nama Sankirtan. Golo kera prema dana Hari Nama Sankirtan. Golo kera prema dana Hari Nama Sankirtana. Golo kera prema dana Hari Nama Sankirtana. It means that this avatar, in the form of a mantra, has come down from highest realm of the spiritual world. So if you take that and serve it by saying it, chanting it, then without a doubt, you'll become successful in your yoga practice. Okay, that leaves us with one more reflection. Yeah. Times +1.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful class. I'm reminded of when you were sharing about how you, in the beginning of your Krishna conscious life, how you had a notion of not eating so that you can be spiritual. I got reminded that when I was first reading Prabhupada's Your Ever Well-Wisher, the short version of the Leelamrita, I was very struck when Prabhupada said that I didn't come with anything. He didn't have, he was old, he was 70, and he didn't have any money on him, not much. But he said he had the faith in holy name. And that really caught my attention at that time, that, because coming to the US from a country where the culture is so different, I had experienced that. And of course, Prabhupada went through so much more. And at such an old age, when he said that he had faith in the holy name, and that was all that kept him going, I was so struck by that.
Thank you. So we can try it. Just try depending on the mantra, which is what is being suggested here, and remember that your problems and whatever complexities there are, whatever shortages you feel, will be fulfilled, the shortages will be, and the complexities ironed out by thinking of Krishna, and the best way to think of Krishna is by chanting the mantra. Okay, for the close, Kameshwari.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So the point that stuck to me is the Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Yejana Paripasate, the shloka that you brought up. Because if you remember, Krishna promises if we remember him, then he provides what we lack and maintains what we have. And definitely we need things to live and we need ability to serve. I just wanted to share quickly yesterday when we were on book distribution, one family, the lady, she opened the door and she said, my son just woke up, come after some time. So we covered few doors, we went back. And then we opened, again we knocked, then the husband came that time. So then he mentioned that his parents are connected to ISKCON, and he knows Lord Chaitanya. So it is very rare to anybody knows Lord Chaitanya when we go out. And he said his name is Sai Krishna Chaitanya. So my parents named me, so we were so happy. But he said, we have a 2-year-old, and he just born in pandemic, and we are hands full, and we are going to have second child soon. So you can imagine, we don't know when we will read the books. And I know everything my parents told. So many things, we're trying to glorify everything done. And I was thinking that probably he's not ready. But then I was thinking only if Krishna inspires him, something can happen. Otherwise, I kept quiet. Then Ramrati Prabhu steps in and he says, we totally understand you don't have time. No worries. We just need help preserve. So you please keep it in your library. You read when you can later, when, somewhere in window will open up. And definitely he had some good samskara. So he opened up and he said, okay, fine. He said, I will take it. And he took. So I was just thinking that, anybody accepting the book, Krishna has to give him the inspiration from within. And there is nothing we can do. I mean, what ability we have. We can only remember him. We can only remember him, and he can make things happen. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very practical. Even engaged in service, we have to depend on Krishna for the result. Every aspect of our life. That's that tune we were talking about. Oh, Maharaj, please go ahead.
You were saying how Krishna's guarantee is the real guarantee. One of the devotees brought it up, and you confirmed that Krishna's guarantee is the real guarantee. And I was out on book distribution, And of course, I met a man and I said, what do you do? He says, I'm in quality control. I said, well, that's a really good job. I said, that's a great job. He says, no, we control the quality. He says, we make it good enough to last through the warranty, then we make it break down a little bit, and then we make it so you have to replace it. So Krishna's guarantee is the real guarantee, not this quality control guarantee. And the man did take a book.
Thank you, Maharaj. Practical example. Same two we talked about. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. We concluded that the best plan is to think of Krishna, so plan your life around that. The easiest way to do that, the simple way, may not be easy at first, is to chant Hare Krishna. So you can reorganize around that principle as much as possible to chant Hare Krishna And then always think of Krishna, think of things in relationship to him by thinking how to offer them. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's not over yet. Now we got a Hare Krishna dance party. No, we do. Okay. So this dance party is only a warm-up because we're going to take it out on the streets sometime soon. We were in Palo Alto, another warm-up, but we're going to have dance parties all over. Yeah. We're going to have dance parties all over San Francisco, and then it's going to spill out to all the adjoining cities. And everyone's going to come out of the office buildings, dance in the street, and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So now we'll put all the seats away, and we'll clear the dance floor, and then you can dance with abandon. Don't worry, everyone's into this. It's okay to dance and just let yourself go. Okay, ready? Yes. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Hari, 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 Hari. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo. Go ahead. Abhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Karine. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vrivrajakajarya Stotarastashishiman Pai Charanada Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vrivrajakajarya Stotarastashishiman Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Kuli Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Nam Deeptam Ki Jai. Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glorious is some devotees. All glorious is some devotees. All glorious the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Shri Lakshmi Devi so desire, please give full protection to Hansapriya's mother at your lotus feet. Thank you for considering our request. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Kala dala dalahi Kala dala dalahi Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Shilatanta Nakhalaye Shilatanta Nakhalaye Ito Nasimha Bharato Nasimha Ito Nasimha Bharato Nasimha Yato Yato Yami Tato Nasimha Yato Yato Yami Tato Nasimha Ahe Nasimha Hridaye Nasimha Bahe Nasimha Hridaye Nasimha Narasimha Madim Saranam Kapate Narasimha Madim Saranam Kapate Avakara Kamala Vare Nakham Adbhuta Shringam Balita Hiranyagashipur Tanu Bhringam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadita Hare Jai Jagadita Hare Jai Jagadita Hare Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakham Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyagashipur Tanu Bhringam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadita Hare Jai Jagadita Hare Jai Jagadita Hare Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakham Adbhuta Shringam Jai Nasimha Dev, Nasimha Dev, Nasimha Dev, Jaya Nasimha Dev. Prahlad Maharaj, Jai Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki, Prahlad Maharaj ki, my Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're excited to see all our returning members and also so many bright new faces here today. So we first thank Vaisesika Prabhu for the wonderful class as well as the Kirtan. And we thank Balaram for the wonderful Nishingadi prayers. We have several sponsors for today evening's program. The first is Divya Kumari Mataji and Achyuta Kumar Prabhu, who are sponsoring on behalf of little Aradhya's birthday. So for every sponsor who isn't anonymous, we request them to please come up so we can give a little gift. So Aradhya, please come.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Please bless me.
We also have Mohan Katha, who is sponsoring on behalf of his daughter, Bhargavi's birthday. Bhargavi or Mohan Prabhu, are you here? Oh, please.
Welcome. Would you like to say a few words? Thank you. This is my second time coming here, so it was really nice.
And finally, we have Nilima Agarwal, who is sponsoring on behalf of her parents, Mani and Om Prakash Junjunwala. Are they here? Oh, please.
This is my first time here. I just wanted to weep. It's been my parents passed away last year, so just want to wish them all the peace and calm with the Krishnas, under Krishnas. That's all. Thank you.
We have another sponsor named Shayan Trini sponsoring for her parents' 35th anniversary.
Okay. We also have another sponsor, Shayan Trini, who is sponsoring for the 35th anniversary of her parents.
Hare Krishna, everyone. It's on behalf of my parents, like their 35th marriage anniversary was last Saturday. So please keep them in your prayers so that they live healthy. And they had COVID recently, so yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're having more and more sponsors. We have another sponsor here, Geeta Mataji, who is sponsoring on behalf of her son, Advait. Is it your birthday?
It was on January 16th.
Okay. But what are you sponsoring? Say a few words. Say a few words. Say Hare Krishna and say something.
Hare Krishna. Yatra Parthe. Yatra Yogeshwaro Krishna Yatra Partho Dhanurdara Tatra Shi Vijayo Bhutir Droanu Nitir Matir Mama.
Thank you so much. That was so nice. Thank you. I'll give you your gift. We also have one more sponsor who's Suyash Prabhu, who's sponsoring in the memory of his grandmother who passed away. Suyash Prabhu, are you here? He's not here, okay. So these are our sponsors for today. We also have one anonymous sponsor. For those who I couldn't give a gift, I will give after the program. And now we'll announce the cooks.
Hare Krishna. So today's Sunday feast was cooked by a new team for the 5th Sunday now, and they finished well before time and followed the clean as you go method. So today's leader was Sumadara Gopika Mataji, helped by Krishangi Gopi Mataji, Bhumika Mataji, Charunimai Prabhu, Indu Shekhar Prabhu, Sitarani Mataji, Vaishnavi Mataji, and Vijay Damodar Prabhu.
As you might notice, the Prasadam boxes are already ready to go and packed away, so please feel free to take a box before you leave. And we always need help for extra cleaning on Sundays. So if you would like to clean, please reach out to Sri Gopal Prabhu, and he can assign you and help you find the devotee who is leading the cleaning efforts today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
The next part of our ceremony, which is just before we take prasadam, is singing a prayer together, written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as you can see the writing up on the left-hand side. And down below you see that the devotees are taking prasadam. And in this beautiful prayer, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the tongue is the most voracious of all the senses. And the activity of yoga means to bring the senses under control. But it's very hard to control the tongue in this world. So Krishna has very kindly given us prasadam, spiritual food. And just by sticking to only eating prasadam, then the tongue naturally comes under control. One feels blissful. Prasadi sarvadukhanam haniras upajayate prasanna chetaso yashu buddhi pariyattishtite. The Bhagavad Gita says, when you get prasad of the Lord, then 3 things happen. Prasadi sarvadukhanam hanir, which means your misery goes away. How many people would like that? When you hear that, you raise your hand really fast. Okay, then prasanna chetaso means your consciousness becomes happy. You're just happy for no reason. How many people would like to be happy for no reason? You don't have to win anything. You're just happy. Buddhir parivatishtite means your intelligence becomes fixed. Would you like to have that? Okay, about half the room only. At least you're happy. Okay. So when you take the Lord's prasad, then you become happy, your intelligence becomes fixed, and all your misery goes away. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is calling out for the help of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, glorifying their Lordship Sri Sri Radha and Krishna by taking prasadam of the Lord. Let's sing the song together. How about it? Everybody ready? Say yes. Sharirat vijaja jotendriya tahika jive pele dishaya sakare ताके देखा काकी संसार है कृष्ण गौर Gori Pare Raja Saprasha Annadi Lopa Shayana Mukapao Radha Krishna Gunarao Vinidako Sri Chaitanya Nivika Vinidako Sri Chaitanya Gita Madhari Govinde Namprani Vaishnava Kopa Punya Patandaja Vishwa Sunanta Prasade Sarvadikana Amya Sukajayate Prasana Cheta Soyashi Vidhaya Pusteka Payoga Kanda Vasalamkara Chitaha Uttishta Bodhino Dasa Sarvamayam Jayemahi Bhagavat Shri Mahaprasad Ki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Sai Gaur Hari Bo Please come take Prasadam. Haribo. There's a line right here. Right here. You can line up and take Prasadam. Right here. Right here, line. Put the prayers up. We're going to sing to you while you're in line. Barha. Barha idam nataravara vapu karniyo karnikan bibrad vasa kanata shamcha bayam jamalam randran venur adhara sudaya punayam gopa vrindaranyam swapada ramananam pravishad gita kirti Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibiriditam Shavana Mangalam Srimaratatam Bhuvi Grinantiye Buridhajana Krishna Kirtana Gananartana Kala Patojani Prajita Shadbhakta Valihangsa Chakra Madhupa Shreni Viharaspadam Karnanandikala Dvanirvahatu me Jiva Prangade Shri Chaitanya Dayani De Tavalasal Lila Sudaswaduni Telo Dhunita Kedaya Vishadaya Pronila Ramondaya Shamya Shastra Vivaraya Rasadaya Chitarpito Madhaya Shashvad Bhakti Vinodaya Samadaya Madhuya Maryadaya Shri Chaitanya Doya Nidetavadaya Guyaramandodaya Yakau Marahara Saeva Hivaras Ta Eva Chaitra Shapas Te Kon Milita Malati Surabaya Roda Kadamba Nila Sachaiva Snitata Pitatra Surata Vyapara Lila Vida Deva Rodasi Vedasi Tale Cheta Samutantate Shri Vishnu Shravane Parikshira Bhavad Vaisesika Kirtane Pralada Smarane Tarangri Bhajane Lakshmi Pritu Pujane Akrurastra Vibandane Kapipati Dasyeta Satyarjuna Sarva Swatma Nivedani Balira Bhut Krishna Tire Shampara Aradyo Bhagavan Rajesha Tanayas Tadama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachirupasana Vrajavatu Vargena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam Prema Pumarto Maha Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam Tatra Dharana Para Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam. One more time. Come on now. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam Tatra Dharana Para Go Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Please come take prasadam.